everyone. Great honor to be here, and thanks for the invite from Juicy and also IOSG. And since we are at the DevCon, right? So I like to share a little bit more on all the sort of latest progress in the rollup space, and also for the past few weeks, almost like 1 or 2 months, there have been a bunch of these zoo villages happening in Chiang Mai. And a lot of developers, especially core developers, discussing like how we really push or at least move forward for all the existing rollups from, for example, stage 0 to stage 2. And it's also something I just go ahead and mention, right? So for Ethereum, especially for the near future, right? Like since we already have this rollup-centric future, what kind of new stuff we can do to make all the rollups more decentralized and with much better safety? Before we go into, like, for example, what are different stages for rollup, typically we want to know, okay, what's the existing structure or architecture for the rollup system, right? It didn't really evolve too much for the past few years since first time this rollup was like basically mentioned in Ethereum ecosystem. So when we talk about rollup, right, typically, when we say right now it's a dominant like scaling solution, right? We always want to know like what kind of problems the rollup want to solve, right? So it's quite straightforward. Basically, the rollup is a way for Ethereum or the L1s to offload these on-chain executions to off-chain, typically using this sequencer, basically a very beefy machine to process and also order and also execute the transactions. After that, they will generate proofs. For optimistic rollup, it's typically called fraud proof. For ZK rollup, it's typically called like sort of validity proof and posted to Ethereum. So the L1 or Ethereum can do the verification. So in this case, right, as you can see, most of the transaction will be executed off-chain, but we have the proof to show that these transactions are executed correctly, and the L1 can do the verification of the proofs. So in this case, as you can see, right, even not any of the execution happening on Ethereum, but it can still derive the security from Ethereum. So that's why since 2014, 2015, when Vitaly mentioned about the Ethereum and also how we address these scaling issues for the over a decade, right? Also, like as I mentioned in my tweets, basically, I feel like Vitaly really fulfilled his commitment like a decade ago. Basically, right now we have a much more scalable Ethereum ecosystem to process as many transactions as we want. And and however, we know, right, for rollup, there are multiple tabs. Like sometimes we say it's optimistic rollup, ZK rollup, or base rollup, and also restate rollup. But what kind of, there are also some other ways to basically measure like how decentralized, how like sort of safe these rollups are. And from either this Ethereum forum or typically we check out this L2B, right? They have these different stages to categorize the different rollups. Right now, for most of the rollup, typically they are all in stage 0. Stage 0 is like this kind of training wheel phase, and the requirement or this kind of criteria is very basic. Basically, the project call it a rollup, and after that, you can have some machine to post this transaction body or this compressed like sort of some of the data to the L1. And at the same time, as I mentioned, right, it would be great, like you can have some node, and like full node can download the data or the transaction from the L1, then they can re-execute and restore the entire state for the rollup. And beyond that, since it's a rollup, right, it would be great, like we can have some ways for users to deposit and withdraw their funds. For stage 0, it doesn't require like sort of fraud proof or ZK proof or validity proof. And so in that case, you can see, right, almost any chains who are using like sort of OP stack or Arbitrum Orbit, we basically say that, okay, we launch like a rollup. We don't really argue that is the fraud proof is enabled or not. It's basically even for OP, right? It's just for the past few weeks they enable this fraud proof. But right now, as you can see, right, most of the rollups we can see in the market, probably 100 of the rollups, most of them are at this stage 0 training wheel phase. And beyond that, since Since almost day one, Arbitrum has this fraud proof, and last few weeks, OP enabled this fault proof, right? They just give a new name, basically fault proof, fraud proof. They are almost the same. And if you want to go to stage one, right, then you must have at least one proof system enabled in your rollup. So that typically for optimistic rollup is a fraud proof, and for ZK rollup typically is a validity proof. The difference like for optimistic rollup, right, this fraud proof typically engage with this bisection mechanism. If something wrong, the challenger can challenge this verifier or this sequencer, and then to see who is wrong, and then the other party will be slashed of their stakes. But for validity proof, right, it's a sort of like generated by ZK, that prover, and the proof can be directly verified on Ethereum. And beyond that, typically they also have some not that kind of technical requirements, like I mentioned, right, in the slides. So basically, we need to have a security console. Right now, most of these, basically all the rollups, their contract on Ethereum managed by a multi-sig wallet. So it'd be great, like we can have multiple these like sort of parties and to sign the signature for some necessary upgrades and also bugs. And they also want to have some delays on these decisions. For example, if there's something wrong, we don't want like sort of the things to happen immediately. It'd be great, like we can have a 7-day like sort of delay when we want to do the next upgrade via this security console. And then beyond that, okay, we want a better decentralization and also safety, right? So then there's also the highest stage so far is like stage 2. Basically, for a rollup, you need multiple proof systems. One proof system like fraud proof or ZK proof, that's not enough. Probably we need some TE or some extra proof systems to make you have some redundancy. At the same time, I have some diversity about your proof system. So in that case, if one proof system somehow is broken, for example, there are some critical bugs on the ZK prover, right? But at least we can have probably some fraud proof or TE to make sure we still have the ways to make sure the proof that's submitted to the L1 is correct. And beyond that, of course, we want to limit the security counsel's power, right? We don't want the security counsel to really like sort of upgrade or basically patch the bugs at any time, then the power is too big. And at the same time, we also want to add these extra delays, no longer 7 days, but it would be great, like we have 30 days. And so far, as I mentioned, right, if you look at L2Bit, even it's not that comprehensive. On L2Bit, probably we only have less than 100, but based on our experience, we have definitely over a few hundreds of rollups since we already launched a bunch of them. So in that case, right, almost all of them are in either stage 1 or stage 0. Very few of them, like they are into stage 2. Typically, they have limited functionalities. For example, this DGA is just for trading. And for the major ones like Arbitrum and OP, they are in stage 1. But for most of these OP stack, even Superchain, they are still in stage 0. And if you look closely at this Optimism and also Arbitrum, right, we can see that, okay, typically, if they want to go to stage 2, right, of course, they need to have a multi-prover. So far, they don't have. And beyond that, the other parts are not the technical ones I just mentioned, right? You need to extend the delay when you want to upgrade the contract. And then we will see like how we really like make all the rollups into stage 2, right? Even for Optimism and also Arbitrum. So the one thing as I just mentioned, right? One thing as I just mentioned, right? One is that we can have these multi-prover systems. One is basically the ZK proof or fraud proof, and the other things like as I just mentioned, right? We can also engage with the TE prover to generate the proof. And after that, the security console can see, okay, all the proofs are the same. If not same, probably we can pick 2 out of 3. We get the majority votes, and then to make decision, okay, what kind of proof we post to the L1. And on top of that, right, as I just mentioned, all the proof system, they are not just a standalone. There's a bunch of ways we can combine them together to make a better one. One example is basically for optimistic rollup, we have the fraud proof, and for ZK rollup, we have validity proof. But is it possible we make it together? And so in that case, we can leverage the ZK proofs like these kinds of mathematics correctness. At the same time, we can also reduce the cost of this ZK proof generation. So that's a part I want to mention about this ZK fraud proof approach. So the idea behind this is ZK fraud proof, as I mentioned, right? If it's a ZK rollup, we need to regularly submit this ZK proof to the L1 to the verification. Typically, the prover cost is super high. It's over like $10,000 per month. And also, if you have a lot of transactions, the proof verification on Ethereum also very costly. And beyond that, if we just do this optimistic fraud proof, right? So in that case, like there's a bisection, like sort of a mechanism typically engage with a bunch of these off-chain challengers. And it's very lengthy and sometimes like, right, it takes a long time. The good thing, like if we can combine them together, we can leverage the ZK proof. At the same time, we can also make it optimistic. So in that case, we don't need to regularly, almost every 20 blocks, we generate a ZK proof, so we can save the cost. And one idea behind like sort of this approach is that, okay, let's optimize this optimistic rollup, right? Right now we have this bisection protocol. So we still have the challenger and also sequencer. If something wrong, challenger start this sort of bisection protocol, and then they will challenge each other until that they figure out, okay, this instruction is not correct. Then they figure out like who is correct, who is wrong. So we can replace the last step with the ZK proof. So in that case, as you can see, right, it's super cheap because you only need to generate ZK proof for the last instruction. But the drawback that, as you can see, right, we still need to engage with this bisection protocol. It's very lengthy and takes hours or days. The second option that, forget about this bisection protocol. Let's directly use ZK proof or ZK prover generate the proof for this kind of challenge or the proof for the past few blocks and transactions and post to the L1. So in that case, like as you can see, right, it's relatively expensive because you need to generate ZK proof for a bunch of blocks and also transactions. But however, we don't need to go through this very lengthy bisection mechanism and protocol. And in that case, right, we can quickly decide who is correct and who is wrong. As I just mentioned, right, there's pros and cons for both the solutions. But in the end, I would say it's definitely another approach like we can engage to help and provide an extra proof system for the existing rollup and to move them into this kind of C2. And based on our experience and also learnings, right, most of the rollups so far in the space are either using OPCI or Arbitrum Orbit, because people want the high performance like sort of rollup at the same time with minimum cost. It just like takes probably less than $3,000 every month. And at the same time, people want this ZK proof in some affordable way. And we all know that for ZK proof generation, it takes like from like a few minutes, like 20 minutes to a few hours. It depends on how beefy is your machine or the prover is. And basically that's a part like we can really learn from the past like sort of experience. And beyond that, so far none of these existing system for different proof systems having this kind of staking slashing mechanism. So that means like sometimes it's just a POA network and it's whitelisted and only a few selected sort of nodes can do this challenging and also proof generation. Of course, as I mentioned, right, beyond this ZK proof, fraud proof, optimistic ZK proof, we can also use some TE to do this proof generation. The workflow, as you can see, right, is quite similar to the ZK proof. It's just like you replace the ZK prover to TE prover. Beyond that, you need some extra verification and for the remote attestation. That's it. It's just like this machine is much cheaper than this ZK prover. And but the drawback that, okay, we all know that there's a bunch of side channels against the TE solutions like the SGX, and also I did a bunch of research a decade ago on attacking these systems. But anyway, as I mentioned, right, for state 2, we just need multiple proof systems. If one proof system is under attack or having bugs, so at least we can have this some backup and have some redundancy. And okay, this is not the new one. But as I mentioned, right? Actually, in the new slides today, I will just make the announcement. So we are having like sort of this new system is called Vital, and with Vital, it's basically we can directly push all the existing rollups and also new rollups into state 2. So the good things about this Vital system is basically we don't need to change the existing rollup stacks like OP style, Arbitrum, Orbit, but we will directly provide some extra proof systems. Either it's as I mentioned to you, right? Either it's a ZK validity proof system or optimistic ZK proof system, all these kind of TE proof systems. So one thing I previously mentioned, like AltLayer, we're providing these basically restate rollup systems. And one of the key features, and today I want to announce is about the Vital, is to basically provide this extra verification layer with multiple proof systems embedded. So in that case, when you ask us to help you to launch a rollup, right, we will also launch this Vital AVS to have you directly equip your rollup with a multi-prover system. So in that case, as I mentioned at the beginning, right? Okay, we want all the rollups into state 2, and now with the system we provide, we can directly go into this state 2 without much hassle. And we will also share more details in the rollout day, so just feel free to join us. And beyond that, if you really have a lot of these interest in building the state 2 rollups, and if you want to do a lot of research in this area, for example, providing different proof systems for the existing rollups, just feel free to reach out to us, and it would be great like we can work together on different sort of these aspects. And beyond that, as I mentioned, right, we are already at the tipping point, and we already have all different rollup stacks and rollups. I believe we can easily to basically scale the existing applications in crypto to the internet scale level. But at the same time, we also want to have more applications, and we also want to have more safety for the existing rollups. So that's a part, I believe, for the next few months, the next few years, either for Ethereum Foundation or for us to really push the limit for the space to basically provide a much scalable rollup. At the same time, we also take the decentralization and the safety into consideration. Yeah, that's all about my talk, and yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Yaoqi, for your fantastic presentation on a bursting up world of Rollup. I guess many of us will have questions on where we are at the Rollups process, and we'll prepare a Q&A question session for Yaoqi and our Managing Director, Gokhan, to explain a little bit where we are at the Rollup